with Triple H taking over WWE, it feels like there's a new landscape for wrestling, and a lot of us are already getting converted. We're like, "Yep, wrestling's exciting again. Let's jump right into it." But then we have people like Mark who are miserable and a more less optimistic. I'd say you're going into it like, oh well, I'm not sure. I don't want to jump into it. You don't want to dedicate yourself to it, because I do get that, because you've been a wrestling fan for such a long time. It's difficult to see something you enjoy be crap for such a long time as well. And is that something you want to get back into? You think, well, is it worth the bother? So for you, Mark, what is it about wrestling that you're not really enjoying at the moment? What would get you back into wrestling?
Well, it seems for me personally, and I don't think I'm the only one, to be honest, that like for the past 15 years or so, it's been somewhat on like the decline. There was like fewer and fewer things each week that I'd tune in for. Every now and again, like I kind of drift in and out of it. Like, oh, I see that Stone Cold's back, I'll tune in for that kind of thing. But there's very few things right now that I'm actually interested in, like whether it's the in-ring, the characters, the storylines, the commentary. This isn't just like me reeling off a list of what's terrible with it. It's just things that don't speak to me.
Yeah, 100%. Well, maybe we should start with that then. I think, if we're talking about wrestling, we should talk about actual wrestling and in-ring work. So for you, what is it right now that'd get you back into wrestling? What do you want to see in that squared circle? What do you want to see happen?
I'd love to see quite a bit more aggression, because like there's a few characters what come in and you think, whether or not like Jesus, they're a big boy. Keith Lee when he was back in WWE and that kind of thing, where they can do some serious damage and all this, but it just feels kind of, I've got to be really careful how I word it here, because obviously safety is really important for the wrestlers, but it does feel very, very safe. The actual in-ring, like
timid in some sense, doesn't it? 100%.
That's it. And I think that's linked with what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed to say, what the characters are built in, like I don't think wrestling should be something that you'd feel comfortable watching with your nan.
100%. And that's really what wrestling's been aimed at for the last 10 years or so, is that family PG audience, hasn't it? Whereas, not to say that you and I like aggressive wrestling, because, if there's any of this, backyard wrestling or extreme wrestling, where they're, big saws in their head and stuff and, throwing themselves on nails, you and I are too old for that. Just the thought of, them hurting themselves in that way, it just doesn't appeal to us. But I do feel as though wrestling, since Triple H has taken over, I think this, unfortunately, is going to be a video of me just going, well, Triple H is amazing. I love Triple H, But the in-ring work has taken that step up already. It does feel more aggressive in some ways. There's more blood being shown. The moves feel more brutal. But I know what you're saying. It's not even just a case of aggression and pain. It's more about momentum and why they're doing it. It's got to come in with some reason, right? Not just we're going to punch each other over and over and over again for 15 minutes. But so what do you think about flipping moves and things like that? Because I love WWE, but it feels like every single week right now there's just some massive jump off something, or there's a big suicide dive every week, or I can't count how many times I've seen Rey Mysterio do a moonsault or a 619 the last few months.
Well, it's got to be careful, because remember, if you've ever watched back wrestling from the 50s and 60s, it was mainly wrist locks, very Olympic style, grapple heavy wrestling sort of thing. And then every now and, DDT used to be an absolute finishing move. Now it's just a move in the match to, make the match progress. So we get used to things so quick, and as wrestling moves on, say Bruno Sammartino against Roman Reigns, completely different ball game. They're just completely different styles and everything. But we get used to things that much that, like you say, with Rey Mysterio's, and especially the lucha or the smaller wrestlers, the high flyers, you see a flip, for example, that many times, you're like, all right, do 2 flips. You don't look forward to it. It might as well be a wrist lock or something. It's really impressive what they're doing when you break it down, but you kind of get a little bit desensitized to it, if that makes sense. And it's not like discrediting anyone, but it just feels like the other side of the coin is, as a fan or someone who's watching, we expect a little too much. You can't get right, okay, they jumped off the top rope this week. The next week's going to be a ladder. The week after, they're going to jump off the stage. Then it's going to be the Titantron. Yeah. We can't expect too much. And I'm not sure how to fix this, but I'm just having a win.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right. We see it so much, you almost get desensitized to it in a sense. And I think a really good example of it is Walter, or now Gunther, when he fought Pete Dunne at NXT for the United Kingdom champion. He's a very big, sturdy, big wrestler, slams everyone around. You'd never see him jump off the top rope. And he was really struggling to beat Pete Dunne in storyline. He couldn't finish him. And then he got him down. He thought, right, well, I'm going to do all or nothing. And you get this massive guy, went up to the top rope and just did a huge frog splash. And it was very simple, but that felt more impressive and skilled than seeing Rey Mysterio do 50 flips a week. Do you know what I mean? It felt more impactful. So it feels like with flips and things like that, you need to be more sparing with them. You need to use them less often. But maybe we should move on to promos, because we're talking about in-ring work, and that does feel such a huge part of it, and these characters. Sort of, what for you would get you interested in wrestling again with these promos? Do you want more freedom? Do you want them to be more scripted? What's best for you?
For me, I'd love for them to give characters a lot more just free roam. Let them explore the character in their way. I'm not just saying, like, have at it, is your character, go and do what you want, because they just call out the champion every week.
Yeah.
But, like, as in, there's been a few really good gems in recent years. And when I say recent years, I'm talking 10 years, like Wyatt. That's one of the best things that they've had in the company for a long time, I think. He was like the new feared icon, and less really, like when it's really, you get a promo and it's so forced, like Baron Corbin, the stuff that he's been doing in recent months is, I'm really not a fan at all. It's so forced, and it's like fake laughter. Even Seth Rollins, amazing in ring, but this kind of weird alternate
Joker-like character.
Yeah, I don't think it really seems to work. I just love for people to invest a lot more in the characters, and that might be a thing, maybe a solution to what we were talking about, the in-ring work, similar to what Undertaker was saying just after he retired. He said, I invested that much in the character that there wasn't a need to see me jumping off ladders and stuff. It's like The Rock. How often have you seen him go to the top rope?
Never, right? Not that I can think of.
You don't, do you? It's just like you're that invested in him. I know this is all like, personal skills, because you brought a lot to the table. Like, it was funny, he was charismatic. There was a desire and a need to watch him. But when there's just people there that are just people, or you've got like Baron Corbin's probably the one that springs to mind for me. He's good in ring, but the characters and stuff that he's been doing just really doesn't speak to me at all.
And it's a real shame, and I don't want this again to turn into me just blowing Triple H, and saying how amazing he is. But I think, unfortunately, he is amazing. But like, when we go back to NXT, and we're talking about Baron Corbin, when he was in NXT, he was the lone wolf character, and he had his big shaggy hair, and he used to do all this cool stuff. And that character really suited him. And NXT is part of that developmental brand. It's where they can build their characters, come up to the main roster and be good to go. Whereas it felt like you've got this amazing character in Baron Corbin, you bring him up to the main roster, and then you make him a constable one week, then the week after he's a king, then he's a tramp, then he wins loads of money, then he's just wearing Hawaiian. He's had 5 gimmicks in the space of like 3-4 years. It's like, he's got a good gimmick. Let him keep that gimmick. Why are you changing it and just sort of ruining it? Like you said before with The Undertaker, you're so invested in that character. Do you know what I mean? Like with WrestleMania, when Undertaker came back, my nan said, oh, can I watch Undertaker's entrance? She's got no interest in wrestling, but she wants to see that big entrance, this big character that people are invested in for years and years and years. And it does feel like we're losing out on these interesting characters, you know. So we're talking about watching weekly televised wrestling, but one thing I feel like, you know, you always watch WrestleMania and Royal Rumble, and you sort of flicker in and out of pay-per-views. But there's a lot of pay-per-views you don't watch, like Hell in a Cell, TLC, Survivor Series, and so on and so forth. What is it that'd get you to watch pay-per-views again?
I think, especially with that example of Hell in a Cell, less is more. Hell in a Cell nowadays might as well be a singles match that happens to have a cage around the ring. It's, you know, like, as in Hell in a Cell used to be a rivalry ender. Like, they can't contain it anymore. Right, we're going to stick a cage in, we're top on it. You're going to get thrown in there. If you go back and watch the Triple H and Shawn Michaels rivalry in 2004, they ended it in a Hell in a Cell. And this isn't me saying I want everyone to jump off the top sort of thing. It's like they can't contain it, so they've got to put them in this cage. That's how you end it. There is one person walking out there and the other one probably won't. You know, like in the Hell in a Cell matches, they used to say, you know, there's only been 13 ever that's happened, and The Undertaker's appeared in 8 of them or whatever it was. But now it just feels like, oh, it's July or whenever it is, you know what I mean? So there's this storyline. Yeah, stick them in Hell in a Cell, it'll get more. And and the red cell, I don't know if that's to, like, in case there's any bleeding on the cell or anything like that. I'm not sure, but I can't see anything through it. But it's the same again. I'll just quickly mention with the Elimination Chamber. Again, I know safety is really important, but that just looks like a playhouse. Yeah, it looks like all padded and like, you know, the cells, the plexiglass. I hope they've stopped calling it bulletproof glass, by the way, as well.
Yeah, I don't think they call it that anymore. And I agree 100%. It feels like these named pay-per-views, they're there to just to grab attention, aren't they? You know, Hell in a Cell, oh, I love Hell in a Cell, let's go watch that. For me, I don't think there's been a good Hell in a Cell match since Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens in 2017. Because
I watched that was good.
Yeah, and it was really good. You know, they used the cage. They sort of played this idea that Kevin Owens is kind of afraid of heights and he was struggling to climb up the cage. And then and you've got Shane McMahon jumping off and Sami Zayn just saving Kevin Owens last minute. And it's, you know, they'd built up such a rivalry and it was so interesting. Like, oh my God, they're locked in a cage together. And they actually used the cage. Whereas you're right now it does feel just like a singles match with a cage around it. You know, it might as well be an octagon. You know, it doesn't matter. It's useless. And with the red cage, yeah, I wonder if that's a case of, because they can make it out of plastic. So if it's red, it looks more metallic. Maybe, I'm not sure. There is some weird thing about it, and I really, really hate it. Let's hope moving on in the future that they can sort of just get rid of these name pay-per-views and do more, you know, like I like, you know, like Judgment Day and all that kind of stuff and No Mercy. You know, they're much more interested and I think more appealing to relapsed fans. You know, imagine if they brought No Mercy back and there was a big Hell in a Cell match for the main event. You know, you'd probably watch it, right? You'd be more.
It was more like, you know, like especially with the stage and the setup, the Titantrons. Each pay-per-view, they used to have like an enormous like setup, and it just made it feel like this is a really big deal. This is the pay-per-view, the once a month payoff that we've been waiting for. Whether it's No Mercy, Judgment Day, Unforgiven, all this, they always had a somewhat of a theme going on. You know, I remember like No Way Out used to have like the chains and stuff as in No Way Out, you know, and it just fit. It was just perfect for me. Anyway, like, you know, as soon as you tune in and you start seeing the pyro come down and like, this is the payoff. This is what we've been waiting for. It fit well for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It feels now like when they do their pay-per-views, the only ones that look different are WrestleMania, because, you know, they've always got the big stadium and, you know, like there's stupid boat or whatever built up, or there's some set made up. And Royal Rumble, because now with the Royal Rumble, they kind of do that double pathway, don't they? Which just makes it slightly different. You think, oh, okay, this looks interesting. You're right, like, just putting 2 runways, just for some reason in my head, makes it more interesting. It feels like a different event. Whereas then when it's like, oh, they've just got red ropes in the ring, and it just says Hell in a Cell. It looks like an episode of Raw, doesn't it? It doesn't feel any different. But sort of talking about how things look, how do you sort of feel about the visuals for WWE? You know, like, do you want more pyro? Do you want the camera work to be better? You know, those animations, things like that. What would get you back watching it?
The exactly them 2 points, you just nailed it for me. One, I want my pyro back. I think it just makes it look so cool. You know, like because they've got the signature ones, don't they? You remember Goldberg? He used to walk through the pyro.
Well,
You had Big Show waiting for the
yeah.
big. You know, it just looks so cool. And exactly the camera work. I've got a real issue, and I always have done with the camera work. If someone's doing a flurry of punches, the camera zooming in and out, in and out. I'm going dizzy. I can't watch it and enjoy it because it just winds me up. You know, like the if there's a chair shot, they zoom right in, or like someone's swinging, the camera's going up and down, up and down. I'm going dizzy. Like as I tried watching Kevin Owens and Stone Cold back at this year's WrestleMania. At the first couple of minutes of that match, wait until you see him stomping him in the corner, sort of thing. I couldn't finish it. I was just like, this is painful to watch.
100%. I agree. I think it's kind of like when we were talking about the other flips and the high flying stuff, like less is more. Like if they want to do these big, there's a big moment, let's slam the camera in and shake it about and stuff. That'd work if it was for a really big move and it felt impactful. But when you're just doing it every single time with the camera just going in and out, in and out, in and out, it loses all of its reasoning. There's no need for it. And sort of going back to pyro, did you see when Goldberg first came back? There's like a like Goldberg 24 or whatever, and there's him coming back, and they're like, so we're not gonna do pyro. It's like, I want pyro, and he just sort of forced them to put it back in because that is such a big part of Goldberg's entrance, isn't it? You know, that whole is coming through the hallway, the guards are with him the whole time. You don't want to lose out on that.
That's his entrance. Do you remember a few years ago when Bobby Lashley returned? It was the night after WrestleMania, the Raw. There's always a big payoff there. And he used to do the, he still does, that thing. And there was just, he used to be fireworks. He comes out, does this, nothing. You're like, it just feels like it's missing something. Chuck a couple of fireworks in there. Get in touch with Rammstein. They'll give you enough pyro.
That's the thing, isn't it? You want it to be visually appealing. You need something there that's like, wow, this is interesting. And now rather than pyro, they seem to use these animations all the time now. They'll like make like a Roman Reigns on Blender and just stick it on the top. What do you sort of feel about those?
I find them, I think, I sound like so negative right now, but I really can't take them. Like, especially when is it only for the big ones, like for the main events?
No, they seem to use it on Raw all the time now. Just like there's just Roman Reigns animation,
especially with the Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, because they both had him, at SummerSlam and things, and they've got like Brock's got his skull. Just looks like it looks like a boss from a PlayStation 1 game. Like it's just like a sort of kind of 3D hollow image that's glitching out a little bit, and I don't think it really does it any justice at all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what they're for. Who is that for? Are there all these kids sitting around going, oh, they've done that animation of Roman Reigns? They want to see Roman Reigns. They don't want to see this big weird animation thing blocking it up. Like imagine if every time Undertaker came out, his iconic entrance, rather than lightning striking the ring or Kane and fire coming out of the, out the ring post, it was just a drawing a Kane came up. Like who cares? It's rubbish. It's terrible.
That's it. Even if you do see him, like, Roman giving it all this kind of thing, the kid's excited for it. You're like, he's coming out in a minute.
Yeah, get Roman to do that. You've got him there. Why have you got an animation of him? He's there doing it. Get him to do it. Sort of. It's not just that though, is it? It's the whole visuals, like the LED lightings and things like that. How do you feel about those? All around the side and stuff.
Mate, it feels like a bash video does this, and I'm not. It just like you keep lining them up, and I'm like knocking them down because you're hitting the target for me every time. I think the LED lights, around the barriers of the ring and on the ring itself, it doesn't work. It just looks plastic, and the ring post covers. Get rid. It's meant to be a steel ring post. but these covers, you can hear the plastic when they get thrown into it. You can hear like, the bash on there, and it just seems, again, less is more. Just give them a barricade. Focus more on the in-ring ability of the actual wrestlers rather than trying to make it look pretty. Because, how cool is it, like when, I know they don't do it on every single side of the ring, but the LED lights, you can't lift that up, get a few weapons out. You know what I mean? The apron just worked. I mean,
yeah, I agree. 100%.
There's a mystery there, but with the LED lights, that door is firmly shut.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Hornswoggle's definitely not going to come crawling out under there. There's nothing interesting going to happen, is it?
Unless he's making his Shockmaster entrance. He just smashes through the screen. Falls over.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not that we believe that wrestling's real, and it's not scripted, but you've got to play into that. The second you make it all plastic and you put big LED lights around it all, it just plays into the fact that this is sports entertainment. It's not wrestling. I want to watch it and go, how are they doing this? How are they making this look real? And it really takes you out of it. You just think, oh yeah, this is just two guys pretending to fight. And that's the real issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems to be exactly like you said. Then you want to be invested in the product itself. Like if I was to turn on Raw now, I probably couldn't relate to 80-90% of it. Yeah. It's just a completely different world. And I'm trying not to sound like just a bitter attitude and ruthless aggression fan coming into the new era, because I'm trying to be a wrestling fan again.
Yeah.
But there's just things that, for me personally, I know that it's not exactly like Triple H and his new role is going to say, oh, Mark from Northern Lights, he don't like all this, so get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's just like things that I'd like to see. But maybe with the new job that he's got, the new role, maybe it'll be different changes. It might not be these ones, because I know Triple H is very driven and focused, in in-ring talent, that kind of thing, and he's got big shoes to fill, like he says, but he's very confident that he's got a good team around him to fill the shoes that have been left.
Yeah, 100%. And I know it feels like we've come at this from almost a negative angle, but I think there is real optimism moving forward with Triple H taking over, because like if you look at NXT, it is gritty. It did feel realistic. I mean, not NXT 2.0 because that completely changed, but if you look at that original NXT, it almost everything you wanted, Mark, in a sense. So that's why I am optimistic that we are going to move into this new era and we are going to get something more exciting. And I really hope that, within a year, 2 years, you and I are both wrestling fans again. Really looking forward to all the pay-per-views and things like that. It'd be great. But I do think that's all we've got time for. Thank you everyone for watching. If you can like, comment and subscribe, it really does help us out.